This is David with EV World News, where we talk about green energy, electric vehicles, and the stock markets. I'm here today with our founder, Bill Moore. How's it going, Bill?
Tip of the hat, doing good, thank you.
Good on your EV or
E-Visioneer.
eVisioneer. eVisioneer. It's always hard to say that. There's another guy I found on LinkedIn that goes by the EVangelist.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I
I've used
find
that
that,
a lot, yeah.
yeah, it's hard to find a lot of words that start with EV though. So every, um, But anyways, today we're going to talk a little bit about, we've talked about aviation a little bit. So today we're going to do it again today because this is very interesting how people are getting into basically bigger and bigger electric drones, but now hauling people around.
Yeah,
And so Joby performs the first eVTOL test flights in New York. Now, there's always been helicopters. I'm not sure, what we're getting here with the eVTOL, but it is still kind of fascinating. The first demonstration flight of an eVTOL took place in the city and the first flight for the company's aircraft in an urban setting. I've seen some other ones take flight like on farms and some things like that, but this one's going to
this
be
one's the first
actually
one. Yeah, they actually made the flight. They left from one of the helipads on the Hudson River in South Manhattan and flew over to JFK. As you and I were talking earlier, uh, I've had the opportunity, courtesy of BMW many years ago, to uh, ride in one of their vehicles, one of their drivers who picked us up at JFK, and drive into downtown Manhattan to a hotel where they were going to have a big event, which was actually the reveal of the BMW i3. So that tells you how long ago this was. But that drive through the traffic and through all the different suburbs and things, I think at least took 45 minutes to an hour. It's just, and particularly once you get to the island of Manhattan, it's just stop and go, stop and go, stop and go.
right.
And mostly it's stop.
Like I
And
said before, I wouldn't want to
we
drive there.
actually had watched a pedestrian. I think it was a pedestrian, was a kid on a bike. I don't remember now, but anyway, they went faster than we did in that traffic.
Wow.
So it takes a long time. So if you could offer people a way, particularly, you take a bus, a taxi, whatever, the subway down to the helipad, walk out to this electric VTOL, and whisk you over to the airport in 7 minutes. That is amazing. Now, it'll probably be still a while because they've got to work out things with the FAA. They got to, work out flight routes and things so you're not interfering with traffic from LaGuardia, and traffic from Teterboro, and so on, all these other airports around. Not to
Right.
mention Liberty over in New Jersey and JFK. So you got a lot of air traffic around there, and so getting this kind of schedule service is going to take a while to work out. And of course, there's just the marketing issues and the technical issues, and they got to manufacture more of them because they're not going to do this with just one. There's got to be, probably a
Right.
couple of these things running. Um,
They've
but
gotten
but they
significant.
demonstrated that it can be done. It only took 7 minutes to do it, which is for a New
Pretty
Yorker or
phenomenal.
somebody going into New York. That's traveling at light speed.
Yeah, apparently it can travel approximately 100 miles,
Yes,
which
yeah.
which that's
Of course,
pretty decent.
given caveats, temperature and winds and you know
Right.
things of that nature. And it'll carry. I think it carries what, 4 passengers plus the pilot, I believe.
Oh, I didn't.
The
Yeah, 4
estimated price,
passengers. That's pretty
yeah,
big.
estimated price of the ticket is $200, about the same as if you were going to take a Uber Black, from Manhattan out to the airport.
Oh, really? I didn't see
Well,
that it would
yeah,
be
it
that
wasn't in the
inexpensive.
article, but it was in one of the videos that one of the local TV stations did on it. So
$200 per passenger?
two hundred
That's
dollars
not,
per passenger. Yeah,
yeah, that doesn't seem crazy, considering it's
considering it's New York
right, considering it's New
and just
York.
I'd pay it just for
Yeah.
the experience, but
Joby says they've flown 30,000 miles in their
yeah,
full-scale prototypes
yeah.
since 2017, so they know this is working. That's a lot of miles. And Delta is
His
working
investor
with
in it.
them,
Yep.
and Delta was commenting that they've invested $7 billion in New York City at LaGuardia and JFK.
Yeah.
So, Delta's real big into this. They're working with Delta Airlines, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and New York City EDC as they plan for the eVTOL operations. Development of infrastructure at KJFK and LaGuardia Airport. These
Yeah. Just,
planned
just FYI, it's VTOL.
VTOL,
Yeah, you go.
eVTOL.
It's eVTOL. Yeah, vertical takeoff and landing. That's a helicopter, right? So
Hmm.
that technology is, been classically a long time. It's been called VTOL, but because now it's instead of using, Jet 8 or some kind of fossil fuel in a turbine, or radial engine in the old helicopters, they're using electric motors and batteries, and so VTOL is instead of EV, whatever you were saying there. It's technically it's VTOL. So
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm good at mispronouncing a lot of
oh, that's
stuff
all
because
right.
there's
That's all
never
right.
been any guide for a lot a lot of things. I saw another article was talking about the EV industry needs to get rid of all the jargon.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it
Nah, you're not gonna
it
do
is.
that. Yeah.
No, and a lot of it is science jargon, and it's
Yeah.
really interesting to kind of see because I've had people really get on me for, misusing a couple of
Oh, I
terms,
bet
and
I bet somebody listening to this is already saying, "More, you're full of you know what."
that's okay. That's
They're probably
okay.
they're probably right.
They're probably right anyways. What do we know? What do we know? I love arguing with people. It's like, oh yeah, no, we don't know much about the EV industry. We have the world's oldest electric vehicle publication. So we probably don't know anything. And then
Yeah.
I've had people argue, it's like, oh, these people will be out of business. Like, well, they've been in business for 90 years and they've been doing electric for 25.
Yeah.
What is going to change in the next few
Yeah.
months that they're going to
Yeah.
switch to diesel from electric?
Yeah.
And I'm just,
Yeah.
sometimes they're just like, what do you know that they don't?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
it's really fascinating because
Yeah.
you get really weird opinions from people who just don't
Well,
see what
it's
you and I
it's
see.
that's it's a change,
Yeah.
from what we were used to and what we grew up with as kids and what we came to idolize. And, you know, I mean, to this day, I do not understand why anybody wants to drive a noisy motorcycle like a Harley. Why do you want to go around making all that noise? But hey, that's me, that's them, you know. So,
When I drive a Tesla, I'm confused as to why when I'm going so fast, it doesn't sound awesome.
yeah.
Okay.
Well,
And
Dodge is going to change that. Dodge is going to give you the
yes,
rowdy motor you want.
yes. Yeah, and Porsche has done it too. They have it
Yeah.
on the Taycan, or Taycan, however they pronounce that word.
I don't know how. I've never heard anybody pronounce it, so I have no idea how they pronounce that one.
Yes. Well, it's kind of like what is it? The
Somebody
BMW
listening help us.
Neue Klasse, you know? Uh, They have one
Oh,
it's basically new class, but it's like
yeah, Neue
new
Klasse.
way. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I haven't figured that one out either.
yeah.
Anyways, our next article today is from Electric. It's talking about how Tesla reveals things that affect its range calculation. And this is
Yeah. Wow.
we are aware that how fast you go affects range because if from what Tesla gives on range, if you go 30 miles per hour, you can extend that range by about 50%. Okay, but nobody drives 30 miles per hour
No.
unless they live in Grand Forks, North Dakota, where the speed limit's 25, which that was always awful. I lived there for 7 8 years. It was really slow. But it was based on the fact that the roads were always covered in ice. So,
Yeah.
you know, but during
Well,
the summertime.
yeah, that too, and maybe because over in Fargo,
Mhm.
they made the GEM electric neighborhood electric vehicle.
Uh-huh.
And the GEM electric vehicles can legally operate on roads where the speed limit is 35 miles or less.
Which
So
is
maybe
almost the whole
with
state.
somebody went to Bismarck and lobbied to have all the the speed limits in town legal for for the cars that are manufactured. Used to be, I don't know if they're there anymore, but used to be manufactured over in Fargo.
Yeah, it was mind-numbingly slow. Anyways, range calculations are difficult regardless of type of powertrain, electric or internal combustion engine. So many factors that can affect the efficiency of a vehicle. It's hard to determine how far it can go on a full battery pack or tank of gas. Let's see what they have to say
The
here.
list is long and impressive. I was amazed.
Let me see. Oh, we have crosswinds, headwinds, humidity, ambient temperature, and a software update. Tire pressure.
Tire
Let's
size.
see. Elevation, grade, traffic speed, average acceleration and deceleration, ambient temperature, humidity and pressure, solar load, and cloud cover. That one, I'm
Mhm.
not sure how that affects the battery. Ini Initial battery percentage,
Right.
initial battery temperature. Now, when you go to charge your Tesla, are you getting close to where so the Tesla has the integrated software that when you're going on a route, it tells you where you're stopping next. Okay, and as you're getting like within 20 minutes of that stopping location, a message pops up that says that it's preparing the battery for charging.
Yeah.
And all what it's doing is it's heating up the battery so it's
Yep.
warm enough
Or cooling
to
it
charge
down.
or
Yeah.
cooling it, and to make it optimal. But let's see, gross combined vehicle weight, rolling resistance, aerodynamic drag coefficient, HVAC consumption, vehicle specific energy consumption like a bike rack or similar, battery preconditioning. Now, that is a lot of different
That is a
things,
lot of
you know.
factors to take into the algorithm.
It sure is. It sure is. I've had people talk about it helps if you're going downhill in one direction a lot, so you're using the regenerative braking
Right.
on the downslope or whatever, because you have to slow down, going down a mountain. And some of that just gets a little bit ridiculous. But we know there's a lot of things that go into the whole thing. I did a whole video on Tesla range a while back, and the comments are pretty hilarious from people um, on that one, talking about how they don't get the range, how it's all a bunch of deception or whatever. But
Yeah.
really, it's just like gas. It's like uh, I've never had a gas powered vehicle that got the city mileage it claimed, but I have frequently outdone the highway mileage on some of the vehicles. And, on it might be the same vehicle. Sometimes it didn't really make sense. It's like, well, why was my driving on the highway better? But, even with gas powered vehicles, the estimates are based on going 60 miles per hour on the highway. Well,
Yeah.
we don't have very many of those 60
Is
mile
that
per
a
hour
flat
roads
gravel
anymore.
highway or is that a highway with inclines and turns and, you know, yeah. See, the thing about gasoline is has such incredible energy density that we can get by with murder with those in terms of driving inefficiently. The somebody going by me on the Kennedy Freeway, we're at 70 miles per hour, and they got to be doing 80
Hmm.
as they race by me, and a big truck with a big flat front nose, and
Hmm.
they're just gulping fuel like crazy. Um, so they can get by with that because of the energy density of that gasoline. Electric batteries don't have that. They have a fraction, a tiny fraction. So we have to be much more efficient.
Now, I'm kind of curious through this new thing we talked about last week with the Dodge Ram, where they're going to have the generator with the gas creating energy for the electric motor, that's beyond the initial like
Right.
150 miles of range. But is that electric generator or gas generator going to be more efficient than a normal internal combustion engine?
Yeah,
That's one of the things I'm curious
yeah.
about.
Theoretically, they can tune the motor to its optimum operational efficiency. And so, whereas you as a driver don't have control of how that motor is responding. That's all being controlled by the control algorithms. So the engineers can tune that engine to operate at the peak efficiency that it would normally operate if it were just sitting on a test stand somewhere. So yes, it will be more efficient, but there's only so much you can do with an internal combustion engine to get, because of the Carnot factor.
We
So
go. What are the
the
big
other thing,
arguments? Oh,
the other thing is that I don't know if any of the people watching this also watch Sandy Monroe, the engineer, and he just reviewed the Dodge Ram hybrid, and his reaction was basically, "Why? Why are you doing this?" So he was not overly excited about the whole concept behind what Dodge is doing there. But you know,
yeah.
uh,
Who knows? Who knows? I'm under the impression though that one of the arguments people have is that when you're powering or charging an electric vehicle, you're using fossil fuels or coal for at the power plant
yeah,
to do that. But one of the things is the power plant is much more efficient at getting energy out of those
yeah,
before it sends it downstream to your car.
right.
And so that's something that people always kind of neglect to point out is the
Yeah, exactly.
efficiency of
And
that.
the amount of coal that is being used to generate power is steadily declining. Now they are replacing some of that with natural gas, and natural gas is somewhat less carbon intensive. It's people like to refer to as an interim fuel type of thing, but coal is becoming less and less a factor. In fact, I think we are scheduled like around 2025 or so to actually generate more of our electricity in the United States from renewable sources than from coal in about a year
Okay.
and a half or 2 years. So so coal is becoming less and less of a relevant power source to power your EV.
Okay. Okay. Well, we got one more article we want to talk about, and this was about Jeff Bezos. So Jeff
Yeah.
Bezos says that the EVs are the only bright spot in the climate fight,
Yeah.
according to some studies. And I wondered if you wanted to go ahead and try to explain this, what's going on here.
Well, Bezos set up this foundation back in 2020 and started it, gave it, I think it was $10 billion to look at solutions and fund issue grants to organizations or individuals who come up with ways to address and solve help address the climate change issue. And of course, Amazon is, one of the very first companies to seriously begin to shift their delivery fleet over to electric vehicles, as well as they
Mhm.
had natural gas and things. But so they are, seriously doing some things about this. So they wanted to do a study. How are we as a planet doing in addressing these standards or these goals that have been set, for example, like at the COP15 conference in Paris in 2015. We now have the next one taking place. I think it's next week in the Middle East. Was that COP 19? I think something like that. Um,
Right.
so standards were set. Here's what we got to do. We got to reduce the amount of fossil fuels, and we got to do more in the way of shifting to more sustainable forms of transportation, and looking at our city planning and so on. And there, when they looked at the study concluded that the only bright spot, the only area in which we are making positive step forward in meeting climate goals is by the uptake of electric vehicles globally. Here in the United States, we went from was like 1% or something like that just a few years ago to was I think we're around 15%, something like that this year. And in fact, in September, the United people buyers in the United States, if I remember the number correctly, bought 1 million electric vehicles in the United States.
For the
Um,
first time.
the first time, yeah. I'm hoping that number's right. Either that or it's 1 million globally, but it's significant number, 1 million. When I started this, there were a total of less than probably 5,000 electric vehicles in the United States. Period.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
So we've come a long way, baby. Um, so
There's no
so
question.
people are making we're making positive progress along that way, along that line. Where we're not making progress, for example, is we were pledged that we would reduce the amount of government subsidies to fossil fuels. We're not doing that. We're increasing it. There are areas where we seriously need to get our act together. Whether we're going to see that out of the COPE conference in Abu Dhabi or somewhere in the Persian Gulf there. Um,
Well, you have some conflicting objectives in energy in the United States. So, for one, the United States needs to be energy independent of other countries. We're capable of doing that. We shouldn't be importing stuff that we have here to use. On the flip side, when we start talking about renewables, a lot of that energy independence is starting to come not just because we have oil and gas, but because we have plenty of renewables. And hopefully we keep seeing this change, and make it so that we're less and less dependent on fossil fuels. But that being said, at some point, it's beneficial to the United States to also not be dependent on, Middle East oil or Venezuelan oil or Russian oil or, and we all see how that's kind of played
or
out
or
in Europe.
Chinese raw,
Yeah, raw
raw
earth,
rare earth, sorry, rare
rare
earth,
earth.
things like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's helpful to see some of those things, and so there's some conflicting um there's some goals that conflict with each other. They both are necessary goals, but they certainly do some things definitely are conflicting, and sometimes it's hard to make some of that play out, I guess. But we're
Well,
seeing
yeah,
change, that's for sure.
this is why you've got the Biden administration pushing electric cars and pushing improved infrastructure and pushing for more renewables and more efficiency and $1 billion here and $1 billion there programs, but at the same time allowing federal waters and federal lands to be opened up to more oil and gas.
Right.
So you've got uh, how do you and part of that's I think part of that's also, I mean, let's be honest, part of it's political
Right.
because one of the arguments of his opponents is that we're not being energy dependent, we're not using all these resources that we have, they're blocking off these lands, and then forcing us to be more reliant on you know uh, bootleg Russian oil and things like that. So it's a difficult, we don't want to be dependent on that. The sad thing is, I think what was it? The globe spends, God, $1 trillion or something like that annually on fossil fuel industry subsidies. The very
Wow.
thing that's killing us is the thing that we're giving tax breaks and subsidies and things to on a global basis.
$1 trillion in subsidies.
Oh, I think it's somewhere in the trillion or more in subsidies. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, there's certainly a lot of it. And I guess it all depends on how you look at it. I know if you invest in oil and gas drilling, your money is immediately tax deductible. But so
Well,
that's a little bit,
there's a
you know,
subsidy. Yeah.
yeah, there's a subsidy of sort, but there's also part of it is there's an expectation of loss. Um, so as
Yeah, you
opposed
drill
to
you drill a dry hole. Yeah.
right, right. So like if you took $100,000 and you set it on fire, you can't write that off on your taxes. But if you put it into an oil and gas drilling
Oil and
rig, you can
gas
immediately
field.
deduct
Yeah.
on your taxes. And
Yeah.
hopefully, and generally those wells have like a 5 to 7 year return, and if they work out, you usually get your money back in about 2 years.
Yeah.
But then you've got other ones that don't work out. So
Yeah,
it's it,
how many abandoned oil and gas wells are there across the continental United States?
I don't know, but it's pretty significant.
3 million.
Wow, I had no idea. I
Three
remember
million.
what's really interesting is look at an old picture of the beach in Los Angeles, and because the whole
Those
California
are the
coast, you see
best.
nothing
Yeah.
but oil there, oil rigs.
Yep. Yep.
And
And some
now
of those are still there. There are parts of
they're
LA that
disguised.
just, their derrick's still there.
They're still there, but they're disguised. They've disguised them under things, or
Yeah.
they've put ornamental things over them. It's really interesting because the oil rigs are still there in Los Angeles, and they're just you can't see them. They have them hidden from sight,
Yeah.
but certainly not the way like Venice Beach used to be when it was a basically just an oil site.
Yeah.
It's really hard to fathom that that was the
Yeah.
case for so long, and things have really changed. Anyways, that's all of our articles for today, Bill.
That's it. Well, there's plenty more. I posted this morning 112 new stories, and I got another 50 or so to go. So make sure you get on our RSS stream. There's lots of news out there, and we only touch the tip of the iceberg on these.